So, for the formally informal, I am Kelly Mabel, and this is Kind Mind Community, and I'm very happy to be here on this October Monday. And this is the last conversation of the month of October, and I'm very, very blessed to have the amazing Ankush Jain with me. And Ankush and I had done some previous coaching together. There was a beautiful opportunity to be able to work with Ankush for a couple of weeks, and I was the first one to put my hand up on that opportunity, and we had some amazing conversations and really just some humanness on my part, sharing some of the things that I was working with and doing. And Ankush, in his wisdom, was guiding me in the direction of more love and understanding, and it was a great experience for me. And I decided that there was an opportunity that I'd seen Ankush building some new projects and some new things in his world. And being that he is a three principles coach and facilitator of some amazing deep dive intensive courses for men and now women, I proposed a conversation with him earlier in the year, and I asked him if he would be willing to come and share his wisdom here as a labor of love to the Kind Mind community. And he said yes. And so I have had an opportunity to chat with him just around, some of the things that he's been doing. And without butchering a bio, I'll say that Ankush has been a success in my eyes, in my personal opinion. I've seen him from understanding his beginning with Jamie Smart and having been a personal mentee, and then moving on to, and by the way, Ankush, jump in if I butcher any of this, okay? Working with Steve Chandler, building his own book, which I had the pleasure of reading recently, called Sweet Sharing, and also having created a program for online coaches and people as practitioners for three principles, which was with Mark Howard. And seeing all this and seeing some of the things that he's been unfolding, it was what Jamie Smart would say, a no-brainer for this girl to host this man and his wisdom today for all of you. And so I welcome you, Ankush.
Well, thank you for having me here, Kelly. It's really an honor to be here with all of you today.
Thank you for coming. I'm just going to turn on speaker view. And so Ankush and I have talked about this, and we thought we would do a little bit of a unfolding from Ankush for about 15, 20, 25 minutes. And then I'd like to open up the room to questions, because one of the things that I find is very helpful for people is to first have some insight around who the speaker is and their journey and how they found the three principles and their life, their children, their babies, things that have happened for them. And then also for you to be able to ask questions in the direction of where you might want more understanding. And so how does that feel, Ankush? Does that work?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I really welcome the interaction with the group. I think that's always the most fun part for me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, without further ado, I welcome you to the room of Kind Mind. And for those of you who have never been here, I welcome you as well. I'm going to put myself on mute because Monday mornings I have a gardener right in my personal space in front of my window that I look out of, and he's revving the blower, although you can't hear it just yet. So off you go, my friend, in your wisdom, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks again, Kelly. Well, it's great to be here. And it's I recognize some of the names in the room, and some of you are kind of new to me. So hello, everyone. Yeah, it's Kelly invited me a few months ago and to share my insights, and I was like, well, how long have we got? There's been so many. Kind of a brief introduction. I got into what we might call personal development when I was 19, all the way back in, I think, 2001, a very long time ago. So you can figure out how old I am. I was hooked. I was really intrigued and excited to be able to change myself is what I thought, because I was very insecure as a teenager. I was bullied a bit at school, had low confidence, and low self-esteem. And so when I came across, a body of work that was about improving yourself, I was like, yeah, I would love to feel better. And so I spent the next, 10, 11 years trying to improve myself. And in reality, a lot of my insecurities were just masked. They weren't really shifted. And eventually that kind of doing all that self-development work led me to coaching. And that's when I kind of accidentally came across the three principles in 2012. And I wasn't expecting anything. There are some people who come across the three principles and they're looking for a change, they're looking for a shift, they want help with something. And usually for me at that point in time, I really wasn't. I kind of was like, I'm good, I'm happy. I wasn't expecting anything to come out of any more what I might call personal development. And the principles, kind of overshadowed everything I did. It was kind of like a little molehill the work that I did before standing next to Everest. It was such a big difference. Both personally and professionally at the time. I was working in a corporate job. And so I said to Kelly, well, maybe why don't I talk about a topic which I don't hear spoken about in maybe 3P webinars so much. I think people like Dickin can talk so beautifully about spiritual truth and consciousness way better than I can. But one thing that really changed for me that I don't see a lot of people talk about is in the realms of kind of money and finance and entrepreneurship, and kind of business and career as well. And it's all connected. I had a lot of thinking around money, which sounds crazy even to say it out loud. When I first came across the three principles, I wanted to be a coach, and is how I came across them. And I thought, this is more fulfilling work than being a procurement manager, in charge of sorting out contracts for, earth moving equipment. And I bought explosives in a past life. That was one of the things I bought. I bought a few different things, and it's not as exciting as it sounds. And I thought, well, coaching people, that's going to be more interesting. And when I did a few coaching sessions, I was really like hooked. But I had this funny belief, right? It was like, well, if it's work that I really enjoy doing, well, then I'm prepared to earn less money, right? But it was almost like, but that's what I should do, right? It's kind of like I can be poor and happy, or I can make more money, but sell my soul or do work that I don't enjoy. That was kind of my vision or my view of the world. And I remember having a conversation with Jamie Smart early on, and he was like, those aren't the only two options, right? He's like, not all poor people are happy. Have you considered that? And I thought about it, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's true. And he went, not all rich people are unhappy. And I grudgingly realized he was right. And he kind of pointed out that happiness or unhappiness have got nothing to do with money, or with wealth, with my income. And there were other insights that flowed from that. For example, I had a belief that people could earn up to £100,000 a year. Like that was okay. I don't know where I got that number from. I wasn't earning that much, but it was like, yeah, that seems okay. But earning over £100,000, well, that's greedy. That's wrong, and there's no need for anyone to earn over that. It's not necessary, and anyone who does, they're just greedy. And again, one day it dawned on me, well, that number is really arbitrary, right? So for me, I've kind of set it at 100, but someone else might set it at 50. Someone else might set it at 30, but someone else might set it at 250, right? I just made it up. And it was absolutely a belief. It was absolutely a thought, and not a fact. But I was treating it as a fact, right? And I had loads and loads of this thinking around money, loads of it. And I've kind of been waiting for years for someone to write a 3P book, but there isn't about money, but there isn't one. So I've kind of explored a whole host of non 3P books around money, and there's a lot of stuff in there that I would ignore, but it would spark insights. It would spark new thinking for me, and I realized that the 3 principles, as I say in every other area, they're neutral. They're facts, right? They're fundamental truths. They're not a how to. They're not a doing. They're not an approach. They're just facts. And so when we take that in the realm of money, right, the 3 principles was helping me cut through a lot of my thinking that looked like facts. They weren't facts. They were thoughts. They were beliefs. They were ideas. And in fact, more so than that, they were thoughts, beliefs, and ideas that just really were unhelpful for me, right? Really, really unhelpful. And, now I'm not suggesting that we all need to go out and become, billionaires or anything, but in the realm of like just the kind of world, money is useful. And I hear a lot of people talk about in our community about this work and how helpful it is, and how we'd love it to get out to more people. And one of the things that I see is that if we were to shift some of our collective thinking around money, right? And certainly for me, as I've been able to, let me just own it, as I've been able to shift some of my thinking around money, it's enabled me to earn more. And so with that higher earning, I'm able to give back. I'm able to do things and help in ways that I wasn't able to do so before, right? Now, this is very different from maybe the personal development view around money. And I've read some of those books, and they're kind of amusing in some ways, interesting in others. This isn't about like, oh, wealthy is good and poor is bad. I get that impression from some of these other books. Again, the principles are neutral, but what I see for myself was I was really getting in the way of my own earning potential, right? So and if I take my work and my job, this isn't just about coaches, but in my job as an example, I wouldn't go for promotions that I might have been offered or come up, because I had this belief, well, if I earn more money, I'm going to have to work harder. And if I work harder, I'll be less happy. Right. And this was all kind of subconscious, but I'd make it an excuse not to go for a promotion. And so I would hold back, and then I would be upset when I'd see other people getting promoted quicker than me. Right. And when I would look at it years later, I would be like, oh man, why did I do that? I was getting in my own way. Right. And another thing, this is so crazy to me, but I would leave the office, like I'd say my contracted hours were 9 till 5, right? I would leave the office at 5:30, because I was like, okay, I can work half an hour longer, but longer than half an hour, well, now I'm going to become a workaholic, and workaholics aren't happy. So I've got to leave the office at 5:30. Now, if I really needed to work on a rare occasion, I might stay later. But I was like, no, it's not going to become a habit. And again, I would go home. This is true. I'd go home and I'd be bored. I'd have nothing to do, right? So in order to be happy in my mind, I needed to leave the office. But it wasn't like there was anything else. It wasn't like I had kids at the time or a family or places to go. And again, I saw years later, man, if I had, and I'm not suggesting that I should have been a workaholic, but if I'd stayed a bit longer and got maybe a little bit more work done, right, I could have been promoted more. I could have increased my earning potential really quite radically and quickly compared to what I did. Outside of work, I wanted to start my own business, and I had a bunch of misunderstandings there. This is way before I wanted to become a coach. So one misunderstanding was, well, there's no way to make money, right? You need a load of money, or all the good ideas have been taken. And it's funny when nowadays I see, business ideas constantly, all the time. And I believe it's because a lot of my habitual thinking has fallen away. A lot of my, you know, I say our brain is like a computer, and our processing power is taken up by all our outside in misunderstandings. So we don't see the opportunities that are in front of us. We don't see what's available to us. And so when that starts falling away, I certainly see way more opportunities. But again, I was in my own way. And in fact, sometimes my friend was a great entrepreneur, is a great entrepreneur, and he once gave me an idea. I'll tell you, it's a very simple idea, right? And he was like, okay, Ankush, you want to make $2,000 a month, you want to make £2,000 a month, I'm going to tell you how to do it. I was like, yeah, sure, Tom. He goes, it's so easy. He said, go onto eBay, right, and buy iPhones from America. And this is, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. And I went, okay. And he goes, look, they cost, and he would show me, cost this much money, right? £300 or whatever, right? And he said, look, that's how much they cost from America. You buy them, and look how much they're selling for in the UK, £400, right? And eBay charges a lot bigger fee now, but it was a lot less in those days. And he was like, basically, you can make, and he was doing it. He was like, you can make £100 a phone by doing this. And I talked myself out of it because I was like, well, it's never that easy. There's got to be a catch, right? And what if I buy a dud phone? Well, there was protection from eBay, from PayPal, but I didn't see it. I was so caught up in my own insecurities around money, and entrepreneurship, that it was like, a gift horse, right? It was right there, and I refused to look at it. So all of this, and I'm just covering a fraction of stuff of whatever's coming to mind, but all of this has shifted so much in my exploration with not only the 3Ps. The 3Ps is kind of foundational for me, but then going out and reading about, well, what do these, like I said, there were no 3P books around money. So what does this person say around money? What does that person say around money? What does that person say? And able to kind of cut through that and see, the wheat from the chaff, as they say. There's a book I read last year called Overcoming Underearning, and there's a lot of non 3P stuff in there, but there's an exercise, right? And anyone can do this. You can all do this. You might want to write this down, right? But it's called the I can't remember what it's called, the money ceiling exercise or something. And she starts, and then she goes, right, imagine earning $10,000 a year, right? How do you feel? And you've got to write down immediately how you feel, no thinking about it. And then you go, right, 20,000. And then you go, 50,000. And then you go 75,000. You go 100, 150, 200. And you can take this as high or as low as you want. And when I did this exercise and I was doing it, it revealed to me a lot of thinking that I had that I hadn't realized. And even though I'd had this shift around, okay, I guess, 100,000 isn't a limit. When I did this exercise, I found another limit for me. And when I looked at it, I was like, that doesn't make sense. Why do I have that thinking? But I did, right? And again, seeing through the lens of the principles, when I looked at it, when I looked at my thinking, I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. That's just made up. It's all made up. And so when that dropped, what was interesting is it's not really about the money. What shifted in me is that my whole way of being changed, right? Because my self-image shifted, right? I had again, I'll tell you, my my thought process was, again, above a certain number, anyone that earns above a certain number, well, they're greedy, or they're bad, or they're whatever, right? And this was maybe informed by certain people that I grew up with, certain people that I knew, where they were very money minded, and they made a lot of money, but I was judging them for not being very nice people. And what that was doing was, it wasn't really having an impact on them. They were getting on with their lives, but it was getting in the way of my own success, if you want to call it, or my earning potential. Um, and so I, again, through the principles, that shifted, right? And it led me to forgive those people and realize there was actually nothing to forgive in the first place. It was just my own thinking. Um, and drop a lot of that judgment of other people, right? And one thing I love about the principles is you can take any topic. So we're just talking about money today, but you can take relationships, or you can take health, or you can take anything. And if you start to, pull the thread, if it were, you'll uncover, in my mind, you'll uncover thinking that you had no idea was thinking, and it affects so much more than that particular area, right? And I see this all the time in the work that I do with my clients. They'll often come to me for one thing, and when we start exploring, we'll end up talking about something completely different, because it's all connected anyway, right? And thoughts don't work in isolation in one area of your life, in my experience anyway. So I don't know if this is making sense, or if this is relevant to people, or whatever. um, but this is certainly what my experience has been. And for whatever reason, I see so many examples of people coming across the principles, and having shifts in their health, right? Especially their mental health, and shifts in so many areas. But I remember talking to Mark Howard about this a few years ago, and I said, Mark, if the principles are really true, right, why aren't there like a bunch of three principles millionaires, right? And like, I'm not saying we have to be gazillionaires, or like it's all about making money, but I was like, it's curious to me, right? Because every time I've gone deeper with exploring money, or money thinking, or whatever, it's always come back to alignment with the principles. So again, this book that I mentioned that I read last year, she had a section in the book where she talked about how self-esteem is correlated to your income, right? Now, you may agree or disagree with that, but let's say it's a truism. It's true some of the times. It's not a principle. Well, when I looked at it and I explored it, I was like, okay, I can see that. And again, for me, the deeper that I understand the principles, the deeper that I see my clients understand the principles, you could say the higher their self-esteem is. And then I started exploring this with my clients, again, through a three principles lens. And I started noticing some of the ones that were struggling with their income um, also had, self-esteem issues, you could say, which, when you look at that through the lens of the principles, again, it dissolves that really quickly, right? So, um, the like I said, for whatever reason, the principles, I think, hold the key and are far simpler to unlocking people's earning potential, just as it is for mental health potential, just as it is for physical health potential, just as it is for relationships, right? We talk about all of those things, but the same is true. The same is true for money, right? The same is true for finances. The same is true for that. And it doesn't need to be. And what I hope is, in a small way, that this conversation that we're having today, I hope this maybe sparks some things for people, helps unlock some things for people. um I coached a lady recently on this women's group that I did, who was in debt. And it was a real big issue for her. She was in thousands of pounds of debt. And I coached her a little bit on it, and the answer and solution to her debt was really straightforward. It wasn't a difficult thing. And I think there's some people here today who were on that call, and it wasn't a difficult thing, but it was her thinking that was getting in the way for her resolving her debt issue. And she'd got this thinking that she could only resolve it in one way, which was getting in the way of just dealing with it in a much more simple way. Right. So well, we've got some comments. I would love to hear from people in the room, and I'd love to take some questions if people are open to that. I don't know what you think, Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I have to say that this conversation, even though I know that it's always wisdom, it's like, wow, how timely and supportive for me. So thank you for that. I was really feeling the concept around it's all made up. It's just all made up. And also seeing some of my skepticism, where I'm looking at something and possibly the cost or the figures are, quite high, and where I make and govern that decision around why I would spend, why I wouldn't, what's made up in my head around spending or not. So, yeah. So let's open it up and see what other people have to say about this conversation or anything that might come up around the principles, your understanding, or anything that Ankush has shared. And I always like to leave space because sometimes it takes a minute to have our thinking catch up to things.
I'll share one more thing, Kelly, while we're waiting for people to type out their question. Just in case someone thinks that I might be promoting materialism, which certainly wasn't what Sid was pointing to. My deepening of my understanding of the principles has certainly helped me financially, because I spend less money on stuff which I think will make me happy. Right? I used to be someone that again was very insecure when I look back in hindsight, and so I wanted the the status symbols, right? I wanted the big company car. When we had the company car option, I literally looked at the list and went, what's the most expensive one that I can get, and ordered that one, right? I mean, that wasn't the only thing, but it was, as opposed to, what did I need? I didn't need a big family saloon car or whatever that I had with the biggest engine, but what I got, I would I've somewhere, I don't even know where they are, I've got a couple of Mont Blanc pens which I didn't need and don't use, and I'd have all these like status things, and the principles has really helped me see that I don't need that. And so it was funny when I quit my corporate job a couple of years into learning the principles. I initially earned a lot less money, but I had more money left over, right? Because I just wasn't spending it on stuff that I didn't need, and it wasn't an issue. And I remember it was so funny, like one of my friends or someone commented like, oh, because when I initially quit my job for a year and a half or so, I moved back in with my parents, and I was, I don't know, 32 or something at the time, 31 maybe, I don't know. And they were like, oh, it must be really difficult, moving back in with your parents. And I was like, no, why would it be difficult? It's wonderful. I mean, what a beautiful opportunity for me to build a deeper relationship with them, and spend time with them at this age. What a gift, right? And they loved it, and my relationship had deepened with them as I'd come across the principles. And I didn't spend any money. It was financially very rewarding. And I realized, oh, they were looking at it from a point of view of, what are people going to think? You're not successful because you're living with your parents at 32 or whatever. But it didn't bother me anymore. And then when we got married, my wife and I still had something. Oh, we need to get a big TV. We need to do this. We need to do that. And then she was like, no. And then I got a bit annoyed. And then I I reflect on that annoyance. I was like, why am I getting annoyed? And again, it exposed some more thinking that I had that I didn't realize was thinking. It's like, oh, yeah, if I don't, we don't get certain stuff to furnish our apartment, that's okay. That can't make me happier. That can't make a difference, right? And so, that's really changed. I was funny that this morning I was dropping my wife off to the station, and I have to drop her off at like 6 o'clock, 6:15 in the morning. It's a super early start for us, and so they always have this show on the radio, which is they call it the morning hustle over here, and it's about entrepreneurs. So I just can't, it's just on that station. So sometimes I hear it when I'm driving back for 10-15 minutes. And it was funny because I was listening to this young entrepreneur on the radio this morning, and he was basically saying the same thing. And they were talking about money, and so people are listening to you, and how can how can they become rich? The guy was saying, he's like, yeah, we don't spend money on stuff. He goes, it was him and his brother, and he was saying, yeah, no, my younger brother, he was like, when can we buy a Range Rover? When can we do this? When can we do that? And he goes, I'd have to talk him out of it. Like, we don't need that stuff, right? He goes, and he had a food business. He goes, I'll spend £10,000 on an oven because that's investing in the business, right?
Yeah.
But he goes, I don't need to spend that on a car, right? And now they're doing very, very well for themselves. But again, it all ties in beautifully with the principles.
Mm-hmm.
I can see Greg's got his hand up. So,
hi, Greg. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for hosting this, Kelly. Thanks, Ankush, for being here. It's funny when you're talking about that, I was thinking about, I have a 17-year-old daughter who just started her first part-time job. And I'm kind of witnessing firsthand kind of the unfolding of thinking about money that she's, I assume has picked up from me or my wife, or how we brought her up. But she's now in this constant dilemma about spending her money that she's earned. I'll give you an example. This past weekend, she went to Fan Expo, which is like a Comic-Con thing here in Toronto, and it was $100 or something. And she was like, I don't know, spent hours anxiety over, like, is it worth spending $100? What if I spend $100? I don't have time, and it takes me X number of shifts to work just to make up that $100. Is it worth, this whole balancing act between the value that she might derive from this experience versus how the effort she had to put in to earn that money. It practically got to the point where he said, like, I'll pay the $100, just go have fun. Like, you need to relax. But I'm just curious if you have any tips or direction for, a good way to model for our kids, kind of the right way to think about a situation like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it applies to things more than money. And Kelly and I were talking about my little one before the call started, and he's nearly 2, and he's been a real inspiration for me, Greg. To just be a better man, right? Because I kind of realized that, and I guess we all know this from our own parents. We don't listen to our parents. No one listens to their parents from what they say. But the greatest teaching is through how they show up in the world, who they are, and so for me, I kind of realized that if I wanted to be a good dad, it's not about telling him certain things. It's about my own who I'm being in the world, and that inspiration, or not to him. And so, if I want to encourage him to, I don't know, be an entrepreneur if he wants to be, right? Well, that wouldn't make sense if I would be too scared to do something entrepreneurial myself, right? And so I would suggest to you that, as opposed to how to handle the conversation with her or how to handle the situation, it might be an opportunity for you to, explore some of your own money thinking, right? And explore, what's going on for you in your own thinking around money that might not be obvious to you, right? If you want to contact me afterwards, I'm happy to share some names of some books or some things that I've found useful. There's even a couple of things that I've done around money in the past that might be helpful to you. But it's really starting from that with yourself, because and I found that, by the way, with the principles. A lot of my family members have found the principles through me. And some people ask me, like, how did you get your mom into this? How did you get your dad into this? Or my parents don't listen, or my wife doesn't listen, or my husband doesn't listen. And I've never tried to force anyone. Well, maybe I might have done right at the beginning, but I learned to let go of it quickly, because trying to teach someone this stuff, that's why people think it's a cult. So it was more about modeling, and I think a lot of people came to the principles through me in the early days, because I just shifted so much. I was such a different person. Like overnight, they saw a massive change in me, and that intrigued people, and that's why my mom said to me, 2 months into my journey with the 3Ps, will you coach me? And I had to pick up my jaw off the ground, because she was never interested in anything to do with personal development beforehand. But that's because, if I look at it in hindsight, I'd read a book, I'd know some more stuff, but I wasn't really changing. I knew concepts, right? And I would use the concepts to go and judge other people, right? A lot of the time. And so it's really about, are we walking our talk? That's what it comes down to, right? So you might want to look at your own anxiety around money. Where am I feeling anxious? Where am I doing the same thing as her? And then explore that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for the question, Greg. I also want to say there's always a word around the 3 principles that I use, which is get really curious. Get really curious around, what your little one, maybe not so little one, is doing, and your own. That's what I like. Thanks for asking. I see that we have a comment in the chat. Ralph, do you want to come on and share? Would you like to? Hi.
Yeah. Hi. What Ankush says I always find is very calm, and money can be very anxiety inducing, especially when you've lived in financial marginalization. And being a community and youth worker in the East End of London, I've found it hard to earn good money, often doing projects that are paid less because of the social value. So it's when I came across the School of Social Entrepreneurship that I realized there may be another way. But the world I've operated in is so under pressure in the UK. So I need to find an alternative way of having a relationship to money. And what Ankush said is, when you have it, you can do so much more. After all, it is only a resource. I guess the 3Ps teach us that our thinking and to ourselves, we are the main resource. But money is needed to make things happen, even if you do good things already. It's definitely the case. So it really resonated with me. I'm not so familiar with the 3Ps, but what resonates from what I do know is it's the thought processes. And I found Ankush's examples really useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that makes some sense.
Yeah. Ankush, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, thank you for that, Ralph. It reminds me of, I went into a prison a few years ago, not because I was naughty. I was sitting in on a 3P training, and the particular group that I sat in with, who were amazing, and the day was so impactful for me. They were struggling for funding, and I understand it's challenging and it was difficult, and they were kind of asking and hoping me, can you pay us some money? And I said, well, here's a better idea, right? And I gave them a few ideas that I found could be really helpful to them. One example, and they're doing it now. They're actually doing it now in their own way. And I'm not saying it's because of me, but that I noticed they are doing it now, is that they're training people who say coaches and stuff in the work that they do, right? And I said that to them, like, I've come here for a day, and this is one of the most impactful days of my life, sitting in with a bunch of prisoners. The guy next to me, his arm was as as thick as my thigh, right? And and I was really hoping for some kind of a metal barrier or something between us, and we were just there. And by the end of it, we were all telling each other that we loved each other. There was a guy in the room, I'm not joking, there's like tattoos on his neck, and he was apparently the biggest drug dealer in the prison. And he looked to me really menacing because he was really good looking, but he had like a tattoo, and I was like, they're the scariest people. I had all this thinking about it. And we had an amazing hug, by the end of that day. And it was unbelievable, right? It was unbelievable. And I said to them, there are people who would pay to have this experience. And I said, if you could somehow team up with a coach who does corporate work, you could bring CEOs in here. It'd be amazing to do a day like you do with 6 CEOs and 6 prisoners, and I'm just getting creative, right? And I'm not saying that's how it should look. Maybe it would be 1 or 2, but I'm like, that would change that person's life. It really impacted me, like I said. And then there were other ideas that I shared with them, and there's so many ways that we can get creative, even in social settings, or areas where we're looking for funding. And again, to me, if anything can help, it's the principles, because we're born creative. I never thought I was a creative person ever. And then, like I said, I never had any entrepreneurial ideas ever. I was always stuck. I could never think of anything. And then I come across the principles, and my mind starts to settle down. And I would say, from a 3P perspective, I got a clearer signal, if you like, to divine mind, which is the source of all creativity. And we can all do that, and we can use other people as well. Like, there's so many people here who are all amazing people. I've never found a community as supportive as the 3P community. I can reach out to anyone I feel in the 3P community, and they have been over the last decade, and generally been very supportive. And so, Ralph or anyone else, I think, you reach out to people with a sincere heart, and they'll try and be as helpful as they can. And that might include, some ideas, or some thoughts, or anything. And again, that's part of why I wanted to do this webinar today, because I think, there's a huge opportunity for people to maybe do some social work like you're doing, and then a bit of private work, and the private work can really help fund the social work. And I had a client who did that years ago. She got this great corporate project, taking the principles into this corporate place, and she sold it to them, with their CSR policy, to say, right, the money that you're paying me for this, we're going to take a portion of that, and we're going to go into this women's prison. And they did, right? And they funded it. And so it's kind of this win-win. And so I think that there's huge opportunities for us to do stuff like that.
Was that helpful?
Thank you, Ankush.
Yeah.
Naturally, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
No, thank you. And you're amongst kind minds here, people that want to get together and speak about these type of issues. So thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks again for having me. Yeah.
Yeah. I noticed in the chat, Ankush, dear friend Linda, would you like to come on, or would you like us to read that out, or what do you think? Where are you?
I'm happy to come on. Hi
there. There you are. Hi, love.
Yeah. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Ankush. I popped a comment in there because discovering the 3Ps was my route to shaking off the feeling of anxiety that I've been living with for years and years and years, and recognizing how I was creating that experience for myself moment to moment, and really, really got that. That was my first sort of insight. But even knowing that, and several years on, I can still really, really whip myself up into a state of anxious feelings thinking about money. And it's mainly from this, I guess it's a self-imposed target that I've put onto myself, that's setting up my own business. By a certain amount of time, I should have at least equaled the amount of money I was being paid when I was back in the corporate world, and I was on really good money. So it's like a very tall stretch, but I can really be hard on myself and make myself feel really, really bad with that perpetual thinking, and I just get caught up in it. Have you got any tips around that?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked the question, and I don't know if I'm going to get some abuse for this from people who sell 3P training programs, but I think that I don't know anyone, like literally, I don't know any person, and there might be some exceptions that prove the rule, but I can't think of anyone who has done a 3P training program or something, and then gone on to make, you know, like an equivalent of a good corporate salary in a short, like in a year or something. Like, I don't know a single person. And I talk to a lot of 3 principles based coaches. That's part of what I do in helping them. And I think a really big issue in our community is unrealistic expectations when it comes to growing a coaching practice. And I think a lot of people, you know, not that they're doing it because they're evil or insecure, insincere or anything, but I think it's easy to get the impression that there's all these other coaches who are making like tons of money, and they're not. You know, I talk to as many coaches as anyone, and people are very open with me because I'm normally you're looking to help them with their businesses. So I'll ask them, you know, what are you earning? What are you charging? How many clients do you have? I need that information to help them. And I think if people really knew how much everyone else was earning in the 3P community, they would be really surprised. It's probably a lot less, or most people are a lot less than they think. You know, I've got a group on Facebook of 1,000 coaches, and I would be surprised if, you know, I think 80% of them are probably going to be earning less than £10,000 a year. Right now, I don't have hard data for that, but if it was vastly different than that, I would be really surprised. Right. And I'm not saying that as a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying that that's what it is. And so, you know, one of the things that I have said to people for years, this is a great profession, and I think this is a great thing to do. Take the principles out there. It's wonderful, and it takes time if you want to make a career out of it. But that's no different than any other career. If I left my corporate job and decided to retrain as a lawyer, I wouldn't be able to make what I was making in my corporate job at that time after so many years. Like it would take me 5 years plus to do that, maybe longer. If I wanted to retrain as a doctor, it might take me 10 years. And so people have got all these unrealistic expectations about, oh, well, I'm going to be a coach and then I'm going to change. You know, I had a client and she said to me, well, all I need is an insight. You know, I believe in the principles and I'm pure 3P, and all I need is one insight. And then when I have that one insight, I'm going to make all this money. And I was like, that's not going to happen. Like that's not how it works. Right. Like the principles are the formless nature of you know, our experience here on earth. And then like you wouldn't have an insight and then suddenly be able to beat Usain Bolt, you know, in 100 meters race. They're two different things, right? And so when you're starting a profession and you're starting something new, it takes time. And then the second thing is, and I was speaking to someone today, and he was you know, he was saying that, oh, I've hired this person, I've hired that person. There's a lot of stuff out there which just is not very helpful in growing a coaching practice. And again, you know, not that this is a big pitch or anything, but Mark Howard and I, the reason we produced this online program, which took us hours and hours and hours and hours, right? Like it's not been very lucrative for us, but the reason we produced it was because we wanted to have something out there that people could see was totally aligned to 3P, was about growing a coaching practice, like, and show that it's connected, and it's not about the thing. Like, I'm just surprised at how many people I speak to, and then the coaching they get or the advice they get and growing a coaching practice is literally the opposite of what I've been told. And what I see works is also completely in line with the principles. So, and again, this is why Mark and I did this course together, is everything that the 3Ps kind of infers or is an an implication of the 3Ps is also completely in line with growing a coaching practice. Now, that doesn't mean you don't need to learn the skills of running a coaching practice, but it's aligned. So if I give you an example, like I wasn't very generous with my time, and I see this again with a lot of coaches. They want to create a client, they'll have a discovery call, then they'll make a proposal, and people won't sign up. And what I learned from a non-3P person through Steve Chandler was, give people more, give them 2 or 3 conversations, let them really get a feel for you, let them understand what it is that you're offering, because you can't really explain 3P like you've got to experience it, right? You got to experience coaching, and that's totally in line with the principles, right? It's totally in line with helping someone rather than trying to go into a little sales conversation. I've had people sign up with me because when we talked a few times, and then they said, well, what does it cost? And I told them, and they said, okay, not for me. I said, that's no problem. And I was still trying to be helpful. I was like, great. Well, do you want me to recommend someone who's maybe a bit cheaper, or do you want to look at some other options, whatever? And I've had, a few people, more than for it to be a coincidence, come back and say, you know what, we've changed our mind, we want to hire you. And I went, oh, okay, how come? And they said, because of the way you responded when we said no. And the way I responded when I said no is because of how I've been mentored and coached around the 3Ps. And I had this conversation with Keith Blevins, and he helped me see that whether a client signs up or not has no impact on how I feel. If someone hires me or not has no impact on how I feel. And you could relay this to corporate, whether you get that promotion or not has no impact on how you feel. And so when we see that in all areas of our life, we're freer to just be. And so that applies, again, when I was in my corporate job. If I had seen that, I would have been freer and taken more risks and been of more service to my employer. And the same is true when I'm running my coaching practice or any business. It's the same thing. You're not caught up in trying to get a sale. You're not caught up in getting someone to sign up. So I don't know if that helps you and answers maybe anything you've got on your mind.
I think the bit about expectations, certainly when I started out running my own business, I probably had very, very unrealistic expectations, because I absorbed and believed how well everyone else was doing so quickly. So that was really true for me. But that bit about how it's not about how much income that impacts on how I feel, I think that's absolutely key to it. But it's just that pressure. I'm creating that pressure, and just that I keep doing it. It's like a habitual behavior. That's what I come back to. So it's forever just catching myself in the moment of doing it, thinking, stop now, stop it right away. Yeah, so it's all been helpful. Thank you, Ankush. Good discussion.
Thanks, Linda.
You're most welcome.
I just wanted to say something to that note. There's, no matter what area, we're talking about the area of coaching and business with Linda's conversation and Ralph, but what other area that you're seeking less, like Linda was in expectations, like I've been in expectations, I think that it all goes back to something that Ankush said earlier, which is the way we find ourselves first, the way we sit in the space of calm stillness with ourself and find that understanding, and what Sid would say is that feeling. So my compass finds alignment when I feel really good, like Ankush was saying, give more, where somebody has opened the space up for me to really see who they are, really experience who and what they're offering. Because it's never really been about the almighty dollar necessarily. It's been more about, do I like this person? Have they unfolded themselves so I can see them for who they truly are? And do I feel aligned inside when I get quiet with what they're offering and what they could possibly guide me to or lead me to, if whatever that is, whatever they're offering. And that goes back to the feeling of, you know, getting quiet and still in our own mind. And whatever you're dealing with, whether it be family relations, or it be work, or be it your business, or be it a lover, you know, the mind is a beautiful place, yet the universal mind is where all the answers come from. And that requires that place of insightful stillness, is the way I see it. Maybe different for some, but that's how I see it. I love you for that conversation, Linda. I've been there many times myself.
Yeah, thank you, Linda, and thank you for adding that, Kelly. It's you know, it's so true. I was just today I was speaking to someone who had reached out to me, and they wanted some help, and they weren't a coach, they wanted to help in their corporate career. And so we started exploring that, and it looked like to this person that there were issues, certain issues. I have communication issues, I have leadership issues, I have this issue and that issue. But see you later, Mark. When we explored that, you know, it was just one universal issue, right? It was that, you know, he had some thinking that didn't look like thinking to him. And we started to explore that, because it's always that. And one of the issues to him looked like was confidence. You know, I'm lacking in confidence. And but it looked like to him, like, you know, when I'm in this particular situation at work, I'm lacking in confidence. And so I spoke to him and I said, well, does this show up anywhere else in your life? And he went, yeah. Right. It wasn't a work issue, right? And it wasn't even a confidence issue. That's just how it was manifesting, right? And so, you know, I've kind of seen that, you know, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, that anytime there's an area of my life that I'm having a challenge in or a struggle with, be it my relationship, be it with my health, be it with my business, be it with whatever, it always leads me back to the principles. And that it always takes me home. It was always a doorway or an opportunity to see more clearly, because, you know, I would say every time, if I really saw the principles, like if I just knew them, you know, and I don't mean knowing them intellectually, I mean just being them, I wouldn't be having that challenge. I just wouldn't. And so it's always an opportunity to dive in. Like I said, when we first got married, you know, my wife and I had disagreements about needing a big TV, right? And I'm sure I'm not the only husband who's had that discussion with his wife. And like I said, that was a doorway to go, well, why am I getting annoyed about this? Like, could it be that I don't need a big TV to be happy? Could that be possible? And it's with everything, you know. Same with my son, you know, like I was finding it difficult, you know, to get him to bed some days, and I realized something. I realized that you know, I was worked up. Like, well, hold on, what's going on here? And it's like, oh, I'm putting a lot of pressure and thinking on needing to put him to bed, like need him to get into bed at one time. And when I slowed down and looked at it, I was like, okay, well, and we were reading this particular author who's talking about, helping your kids, and she was just saying, look, they need about 15 minutes or so to calm down before they get into bed. And I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense, and that kind of relays with my experience. So if we start that process later, and I'm trying to rush the 15 minutes into 10, no wonder after 10 minutes when I try and put him into the cot, he's going to struggle. He's not ready yet. And it took longer to get him into bed. Whereas when I saw that and I was like, okay, and I took that thinking away, I dropped that thinking, I was able to see it for what it was. It was not a fact. All right, well, I'll put him into bed 5 minutes later, but he'd go in and he'd stay in, as opposed to putting him in and then walking out, and then he's crying and then come back in and, all right, take him out, let's settle him again and put him back in. And it's taken an extra half an hour. It got, and I'm not saying it always works, but it got simpler. It got simpler. And similarly, when I remember a few weeks ago, and this really like touches me, he was really unwell, like he was going through teething and he got cold or whatever, and he's at nursery, so he catches everything like all the time. One night he called out for me, right? And I normally get away with that. And my wife deals with it, and she prefers dealing with it. She thinks I always mess it up, so I'm like, you're fine, you do the night stuff, that's fine. But one night he was like, no, Papa, I want Papa, and he was adamant, right? So I went in, and it's like 2:30 in the morning or something. It's like middle of the night, and I'm holding him, and he just wants cuddles. He's not feeling well, he's unhappy, and he wants cuddles. And there's a thought that comes up like, oh my God, it's 2:30 in the morning, why did we decide to have kids, I'm such an idiot, right? And all that stuff comes up, and then I catch myself, and I realize, like, my feelings right now aren't coming from being awake at 2:30 in the morning. And my mind settled, and another thought came up, and I thought, do you know what, there's going to be a time, and I get emotional talking about this, there's going to be a time where I would pay any amount of money in the world to be holding him at 2:30 in the morning. And in that moment, I was like, this is a gift. This is beautiful that I get to hold him and cuddle him in the middle of the night, and it was beautiful. It really, really was. And it, like I say, it makes me emotional. Now, I don't want to do it every night, don't get me wrong. But it was beautiful. And like I was telling you, Kelly, before the call, like my bond with him has so deepened. But it's not because I've kind of read a kind of a super parenting book, or I'm some amazing parent. Of course not. I have my moments and all the rest of it. But again, it's always pointing me back to the principles. It's always that, and that's kind of like my North Star, my guiding point. And that's what that brings me back, and to in being a better parent. So it's always that, right? It's always that.
Yeah, it's the place in mind where I can actually feel the misalignment. I can feel it within myself. I can feel the revved up state of thinking. I can feel that I'm twisting myself into, my God, it's 2:30 in the morning, are you kidding me? Or whatever the current situation is. And then I notice that now it's become a place where within myself I can actually fully notice. And then it's like, oh, right, yeah. And it's just like I lay it all down. If there was like a shedding, it would be a shedding of my thinking in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this is all, I mean, it's all grist for the mill, as they say, any misunderstanding, any challenge, any problem, it's like I said, it's all opportunities. It's all opportunities to see the principles deeper, and I wrote that book that you kind of highlighted. I could have written a whole another book with new insights in the 2 years or 2.5 years that I wrote the book.
Well, try not to do that. I've already got enough tabs going on this one.
Yeah.
These are the ones I'm keeping track of so far.
Right.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, because between the time, what Sid always used to say, we're never seeing or hearing with the same eyes and ears moment to moment. Each moment that we're in this world, we're listening and seeing from moment to moment. So this conversation, is what it is now, but an hour from now, you'll be listening and hearing in a different way.
Right. I've gone back to, not often, I don't like hearing myself, but I've gone back to stuff I've said before, and I learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, yeah, I go back to Sid stuff, and every time it's new and fresh, of course. But I mean, it's anything, and even Sid said you can find, truth if you're in the supermarket, grocery store, as you say, on that side of the pond. It's everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Ralph says, I still get to give my 16-year-old the occasional hug at 2:30, normally when he is ill. He is as tall as me now. I miss these times too, yet also can't wait to hear his insights as he grows. Each moment is precious, and each understanding insight.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So how's everybody feeling? Anybody have anything that's, this conversation has taken and blossomed into many beautiful arenas, and I'm sure it touches everyone in a different way. It certainly does me. Did anybody have anything that came up for them while they were here?
Or have we bored you all to death?
Yes, William, please. Hi, Bill. Nice to see you.
Hi.
Hello.
No, you definitely haven't bored me. I just been taking it all in. And what I'm seeing is that just looking back at my life, boy, it's just filled with loving moments. I was always present. However, I could also see how I allowed my thinking to distract me, to pull me away. Just those habits. And increasingly, I see now that I'm always, always present. And that's becoming more of an understanding, a knowing. It's not just an intellectual thing. And I just see that always I'm walking around with the potential of this loving presence. And every now and then when I'm not into my thinking, I really feel it. And I feel it, certain things trigger it more than others. But I just see, and listening to you, Ankush, because I've followed you for some time too, and I know your aunt or you, Pramila, and so it's like it's right there, just like I'm looking at my hand now. It's just this reminder that when I'm present, oh, there's so much love there. And then I really get caught up in thinking my way out of it, away from it, and doing so. And in addition, it seems that now I'm more conscious of this identity that I've assumed all my life, this Bill or William, this father, this person. And so there's like, wow, even that's a hallucination. Just seeing how I've created that image my attention has been on the image away from the feeling of just that feeling of presence and love. And I'm enjoying that so much. So anyway, I just feel like I love what you said. And I've seen a kind of slow evolution in terms of just how I've experienced you as I've listened to you over the years, Ankush. And just kind of this, it's just like just being more and more naturally in yourself, that loving self. So I just wanted to share that. So thanks.
Thank you, Bill. That's very, very sweet of you to say. And I think it's just a natural side effect, right, of looking in this direction, because shock horror, I'm not perfect. I know that may come as a surprise to some people, but joking aside, no, I'm a human being, and like Sid, I remember Sid saying on one of his videos or something, like, I used to be a really insecure person, and he just said it really matter of fact. I remember the first time I heard him say that, I was like, wow, that's a pretty just like direct thing to say. But he could see it. He could see the difference between the way he was living at that moment versus how he used to live. And I'm not saying mine's as extreme as his, I'm sure it isn't, but I see that myself. And over the years, I've kept looking in this direction because I know there's things that I still don't see. And so that evolution is probably a combination of just living more from this understanding and learning through just being alive, and then also through a little bit more targeted exploration of my thinking from time to time, which I still do, which has been really helpful. That I wouldn't have been able to give this webinar in this way 5 years ago, because I wouldn't have had some of the insights that I've had. I wouldn't have explored what I've explored. And I'm sure in another 5 years, I'd be saying something different. That's just, and I think that's true for all of us. And I really respect anybody who stays on this path. I did once say, don't become a 3P junkie. And that's because I don't want people to turn 3P into an outside in thing that gives them a kind of pleasure or whatever. But at the same time, I do respect people who stay on the journey, because in a sincere way, because I think for all of us, including Sid, that we're always learning, like all the time. There's more to see. And I always get amused when I meet people, normally people who are new to the principles, who say, "Oh, I get the principles," and I'm like, no, that like I say sometimes that anyone who says they get the principles, that's a surefire way of saying you don't get the principles, right? Because there's always deeper to go, and more to see.
I'm glad hearing you say that, because I think it's so easy to latch on to a label like the 3 principles, and that gets just in the way, because I think there's many paths, but it's the experience of now that I just feel that loving presence is what everyone wants and is, and there doesn't have to be a certain little tunnel to it. It's there, it's available, it's always available. And there's so many different ways of reminding ourselves. And that's where I think as we listen to people, it's each time it's another possibility of being reminded of going home right now. I'm already there.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Bill. Thank you for saying. Thank you for saying. I love to hear from Zainab. Hello, welcome.
I think you're on mute, Zainab.
Do you have an external microphone, Zainab? You might do. You might want to. Let's hear. Oh, there you go. There you go.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
A little bit louder if you could.
Is it okay now?
Yes, thank you. Lovely to have you.
Okay, just hold it. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for having this. This is always as insightful as anything. I can't really say how much. What I wanted to share basically is what just happened for me is that, you know, the reminders, just as William said as well, being reminded is always a good thing, and being reminded in different ways, I think it's always something that just renews the way I see things. Like this thing about the money thing is something I've had issues, like I could almost say all my life, basically in different ways. It wasn't as if I know that I don't have everything together, right? It was maybe worse a few years back. I still have, you know, some attachment around money and all that. But for each time I listen to money being discussed through this understanding, one thing is that it's nice to see that everything, when we see through the filter of this understanding, is all the same thing. But then listening to this topic always, you know, makes things clearer for me. And what I think I'm taking away the most, more from this conversation today, is that taking it easy, being kind to oneself. I don't remember who was saying something about thinking that I would be able to make this kind of income that I was making in the corporate world in such a short time in this field. So this is something that I know that I tried to do as well some time back, but now I see that there is no rush, and there's no point trying to rush it, and then there's no point beating myself up when I see it's not happening. Because at a point in time, that's what I did. I beat myself up, you're not doing this right, you're doing that, this could be better, etc. But now I see that it really doesn't matter. And even trying to do it and push it that way, I saw maybe even make things more difficult for me. But I guess just seeing that, being loving and kind to myself in this process of wanting to make money, and then experimenting with different things, is like, that's what I'm taking out of here today. And it's giving me that much, I wouldn't say permission per se, but there's sometimes when you see something different, it's like, okay, yeah, I can do this. So I think that's what I just wanted to share. So thank you very much for doing this, and it was really nice. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome, Zainab. It's always great to have you on one of these things, and I'm glad. I hope that this has maybe shone a light for a few people on on the coaching side of things, that it can be a different way. It doesn't need to be highly pressured. That's true with anything around making money. It doesn't need to be, because I used to believe that, right? Like, if I need to make money, I need to work hard, and I need to be unhappy, and I need to, and it's all just thinking. It's not true. It's not it doesn't bear out in reality.
Zainab, thank you for saying what you were saying. It was Linda that said, you know, where we need to be, what we need to, you know, that feeling of, you know, and I often feel that way. I often feel the way of thinking I should be doing more and having more, and, you know, come on, Kelly, there's more to be done out there. Yet what I realize is that I'm exactly where I need to be when I clear away the thinking of the pressure or the expectation on self. And if I was meant to be anywhere else, I would be.
Yes, I love how you said that. Yes, exactly. you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, this has been a beautiful, rich conversation. Does anybody else have anything to offer or add? You know, whether we're talking about money or babies or precious moments or just the understanding of the principles, no matter what the conversation is, that we're all led back to the same understanding, as Ankush said, is that there is a peaceful, quiet calm within us all, available at any moment on any given day. And Ankush is a beautiful example of pointing people in that direction. Bye, Zainab. Do you have anything you'd like to say before we close, Ankush? Do you feel this is a good place to close? Yeah, there's your book. Zainab's showing your book. Yes, everybody grab this beautiful book. It's an unfoldment of the life and times of Ankush Jain and the experiences of a human, really. A beautiful human.
Yeah, and what I would say is please don't read it as like, okay, this is a book about Ankush, because I just use my story as a kind of a metaphor, or please read it, you know, for your own insights. Please read it for how it can help you. That's kind of why I've written it. And I just want to say thank you to you, Kelly, because I know maybe other people don't know you haven't been feeling very well, and yet you've still shown up today and done this webinar for us all and hosted us so well. So I really appreciate you for, you know, putting the time in, and I know how much hard work goes into doing these things. So sometimes the unsung heroes, you know, of the moderators. So really appreciate you for doing this and welcoming me here and giving me a platform. And I just hope this has been really helpful to people, you know, and you know, if people want to you know, ask any questions, if anyone was shy or they didn't want to, you know, I'm on Facebook, there's my website people can find, and happy for people to reach out, you know, always happy to help anyone out. So I just want to offer that as well. But thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you so much. I believe it's info at ankushjain.co.uk.
Yeah, that's it. .co.uk. Yeah.
.co.uk. And it's been beyond a pleasure to be here with everybody today and to host you, Ankush. Thank you very much. Just a little logistics before we go. Up and coming, the lovely Rick Rupel did some sharing, but I'd like to share that Claire Schutz is coming next week. And for those of you who'd like to join in a kind mind conversation just like today, I would love to have you. So thank you again, Ankush. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And go with a kind mind. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Ankush.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Fabulous week.
Thank you.
Mwah.